everybody, welcome to the poetry vlog. Today, it's not a traditional episode, it's mostly a transcription of a Facebook live stream that I did on Facebook in collaboration with Professor Mary Jo Klinker's class. Their class talks about queering prison abolition narratives, and it was such a privilege and it was incredibly powerful. What you'll find is that I read a couple of poems and play recordings of poems written by survivors and activists for prison abolition movements. And while I'm reading, students commented in with different statistics and facts to talk about how prison abolition is necessary and how the prison industrial complex is just another form of present-day slavery. So I have a couple of quick asks for you. First of all, of course, watch it, listen to it, and learn, because this is perhaps one of the most important topics I could possibly cover on the vlog, because it's so deeply embedded within our current US continental culture. Second of all, comment below with additional facts or statistics or things you didn't see pop up here that will help contribute to this sort of body of knowledge that we're curating in the open access digital platform. So request 1, comment with more information. Request 2, you're going to see actionable items in the description for this video. Please act on those items. So click on the links, buy books that support these types of movements. You can donate books, you can write to folks who are currently incarcerated. There's different organizations that have been vetted by this class that you can donate to. Wide variety of options. So action 2, act. And action 3 is we're creating an open access digital platform for this information so that it can be shared and widely and quickly disseminated. So share it. Sharing on its own is not quite enough because we oftentimes just retweet without comment. Normally that's fine. For this one though, I want us to really be aware when we share this information, why we're doing it and why we care. So my request is that as you're in coalition with us, when you share, please tell folks why you're sharing it, why you care, why you think they should care, and so on. So to summarize, first of all, what you'll find in this episode is just the Facebook Live feed here with the comments, with all the data rolling down the screen, as well as the poem on the other side of the screen while I read. Second, please comment below, contributing to this sort of wealth of information begun by this class, but certainly just begun is the right word for it. Third, please share this video with your own comment on why you're sharing it so that we can get this information out there. And not just in terms of armchair liberalism, where we just have the information out there, but specifically comment on why you're sharing it, and especially if there's any particular resources actually from the list that you want to talk about, but something that really personalizes why you're getting involved in this. All right, thank you for being in coalition. I hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, I'll be in dialogue with you in the comments below. Professor Klinker sent me some recordings introducing each of the topics. So I'll do kind of what I just did and I'll sit here through the recordings and then we'll launch in.
Thank you for inviting our Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies class, Queer Theories and Politics, a course on queer and prison abolition, to the vlog. I'm Mary Jo Klinker, an Associate Professor of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Winona State University. The students and myself reside in rural Minnesota on the Mississippi River here. This course is designed out of a praxis of bridging theory and action in the study of queer resistance to mass incarceration and the movement for abolition. This semester we have studied the critical works presented by scholar activists such as Dean Spade, Eric Stanley, Raina Gazet, C.C. McDonald, Michelle Dillon, and the collaborative work presented in Captive Genders. The following poems will be juxtaposed with some of the students' readings from the course and data from Black and Pink's report, Coming Out of Concrete Closets. In the spirit of resistance and the continual work of abolition, I wanted to start with feminist abolitionist Marilyn Buck. A militant white anti-racist and abolitionist, she lived from December 13, 1947 to August 3, 2010. As her biography states, quote, "As the Black liberation struggle grew in power and determination, Marilyn's political work focused increasingly on solidarity with the movement. In 1973, when Marilyn was 26, she was arrested for procuring firearms for the Black Liberation Army and sentenced to 10 years in prison for buying 2 boxes of legal ammunition with a false ID. At the time, that was the longest sentence ever given for such an offense. At the federal women's prison, she met other women political prisoners, including Assata Shakur, Lolita LeBron, and Bo Brown. Despite being a model prisoner, Marilyn was repeatedly denied parole. She spent the next 8 years, years of intense government repression, particularly against the Black liberation and Puerto Rican movements alone. In 1979, Assata Shakur was liberated from prison, and Marilyn was identified as a suspect in the action. Assata's liberation is considered one of the greatest victories of the Black liberation struggle, end quote. Today, Assata Shakur remains protected by political asylum in Cuba. As Buck has stated, for prisoners, writing is a life raft, to save one from drowning in a prison swamp. I could not write a diary or a journal. I was a political prisoner. Everything I was subject to: investigation, invasion, and confiscation. I was a censored person. In defiance, I turned to poetry, an art of speaking spiritually but flagrantly. End quote. This is Wild Poppies.
Wild poppies. I remember red poppies wild behind the schoolhouse. I didn't want to be there, but I loved to watch the poppies. I used to sit in the window of my room, sketching charcoal trees. What happened to those magnolia trees, to that girl? I went off to college, escaped my father's thunderstorms, Berkeley, rebellion, exhilaration, the Vietnam War, Black Power. Che took me to Chicago, midnight lights under Whacker, Dr. Uptown. South Side, slapped by self-determination for taking Freedom Wall photos without asking. On to California, driving at 3 in the morning in the mountains. I got it. What self-determination means. A daunting task for a young white woman. I was humbled. Practice is concrete, harder than crystal dream concepts. San Francisco, on the front steps at Fulton Street, smoking reefer, drinking bitter dog with Black Panthers and white hippie radicals, talking about when the revolution comes. The revolution did not come. Fred Bennett was missing. We learned he'd been found. Ashes, bones, a wedding ring, but later there was Assata's freedom smile. Then I was captured, locked into a cell of sewer water, spirit deflated. I survived, carried on, glad to be like a weed, a wild red poppy rooted in life. And then we'll hear Marilyn read the poem for us.
This call is from a federal prison. I remember red poppies wild behind the schoolhouse. I didn't want to be there, but I loved to watch the poppies. I used to sit in the window of my room sketching charcoal trees. What happened to those magnolias? To that girl? I went off to college, escaped my father's thunderstorm, Berkeley, rebellion, exhilaration. The Vietnam War, Black Power. Che took me to Chicago. Midnight lights under Whacker Drive, Uptown, South Side. Slapped by self-determination for taking Freedom Wall photos without asking. On to California, driving at 3 o'clock in the morning in the mountains. I got it. What self-determination means. A daunting task for a young white woman. I was humbled. Practice is concrete, harder than crystal dream concepts. San Francisco, on the front steps at Fulton Street, smoking reefer, drinking bitter dog with Black Panthers and white hippie radicals, talking about when the revolution comes. The revolution did not come. Fred Bennett was missing. We learned he'd been found, ashes, bones, a wedding ring. But later there was Assata's freedom smile. Then I was captured, locked into a cell of sewer water, spirit deflated. I survived, carried on, glad to be like a weed, a wild red poppy, rooted in life.
The following poem, 18, was written by Andrea Jenkins, a writer, artist, poet, and transgender activist. It is from her collection, The Tea is Not Silent, New and Selected Poems. She is the first African-American openly trans woman to be elected to office in the United States in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A number of my students have cited her as a local activist leader and inspiration. This poem centralizes the disproportionate hate crimes and state-sanctioned violence that trans women of color face. In it, Jenkins mentions her friend and fellow Minnesota activist Cece McDonald, a Minneapolis black trans woman whose story is documented in the film Free Cece, who has said of prison abolition, quote, "A true abolitionist, while thinking of reform, would think of ways to, first, free prisoners, second, dismantle the prison industrial complex, and third, find alternative solutions and other ways to deal with crime and punishment and justice." End quote. This is 18 by Andrea Jenkins.
18 by Andrea Jenkins. 18 hours since her last meal. Her head is spinning with desperation. Hypersexualized body looks good, but the 5 o'clock shadow is 9 hours over the limit, and her wig is beginning to look matted. She was 18 when she left home. College was life on the streets. The school day was long, seemed like it never ended. Many nights spent on sticky trick sofas, days spent as a social activist, marching, lobbying, organizing. 18 trans women of color gathered for an outpouring of self-love. Laverne Cox said that, quote, "Loving a trans woman of color is a revolutionary act," end quote. Sisters are doing it for themselves. Walking the streets of Bangkok, Thailand, 18 hours before a life-altering surgery. Body didn't evolve the way she dreamed of in her tiny bed inside a shared bedroom that proved to be unsafe. Her mind flashed back to that birth certificate, assigned male at birth, socialized in a patriarchal world, yet unable to fully relate to the constant challenge of trying to live her truth in an upside-down reality. 18 times she threw out all of her women's clothing, known in the community as the purge, ridding oneself of all the reminders of the transgression she's contemplated by the day, annually, for as long as she can remember. Doctors prescribe birth control pills for women for approximately 18 days a month, but some trans women take estrogen every day. The desired effects never really come through. Still, she remains faithful to the goddess. 18 candles on Transgender Day of Remembrance. 18 trans women of color murdered, and not always by those who hate them, but by men who have made love and shared love with them, but want to keep these secrets in the dark. Shout out to the 18 trans sisters out there doing the damn thing. Cherno Baikel, Lourdes Ashley Hunter, Ariana Lind, Cecilia Chung, Valerie Spencer, Ashley Love, Angelica Ross, Arika Carter, Monica Roberts, Miss Major, Janet Mock, Laverne Cox, Tracy McDaniel, Raina Gossett, Cece McDonald, Paradise Lachey, Rahima Martinez, June Remus. It's been 18 years since this journey began, a long way from the days of fear and loathing, and although her life might seem charmed to outsiders, she knows that her trans brothers and sisters are struggling out there, so she tells their story everywhere she's invited. The Mayo Clinic, the Program in Human Sexuality, All Gender Health Seminars, the Women's Foundation, Ramsey County, the Human Rights Campaign Dinner, the Centers for Disease Control, McAllister College, the Arcus Foundation, the University of Minnesota Medical School, Hamline University, the Minnesota Transgender Health Coalition, Metropolitan State University, Trans Ohio, the Minneapolis Urban League, HRSA, the Health Resources and Service Administration, the Task Force Creating Change Conference, and everywhere else she goes. Visibility is key to changing the narrative that shapes this poem. The tables are rapidly turning, attention is being paid. Time, a magazine, put a trans woman of color on the cover and said the transgender movement was at the, quote, tipping point, America's next civil rights frontier, end quote. And while that's true, 18 trans women of color will likely be arrested tonight, processed and locked up with the male population, or placed in solitary for their own protection, becoming more victims of the prison industrial complex that thrives on poor Black bodies to fuel the monetization of Black labor for corporate interests. How does she get through this madness? She remembers those 18 hours of hunger, those 18 years of struggle, the 18 trans sisters showing each other love. She remembers the 18 hours strolling around Bangkok, the 18 times she purged, and the 18 lives honored on TDOR, the 18 different places where she shared their story of brilliance, resilience, and beauty.
Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, Queer Theories and Politics is really grateful for the opportunity to aid in writing letters and packaging books with the LGBT Books to Prisoner project. LGBT Books to Prisoners is an organization from Madison, Wisconsin that sends books and educational materials to LGBT people that are incarcerated. The organization is volunteer and donation-based with the mission to, quote, acknowledge and work against the oppressive functions of the prison system, end quote. If you'd like to make a donation, please go to lgbtbookstoprisoners.org. Thank you.